Hello, 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 and welcome to a Crack and Fold live stream. Hello, Helen. Hello from Netherlands and Denmark. I see we've got people here. I think I saw someone from Dakota, was it earlier? I hope all is well. Is Stefan a guest or a topic? Stefan is a topic. I've only tried to talk to Stefan once and he ignored me, but made a comment on his next video and how he didn't talk to people about things. So perhaps one day he may talk to me. Ismail, hello, Zep and Julie, lots of people here. But so Stefan, the reason I mentioned Stefan is reason for sort of this whole live stream, because he made a video about his culture changing quickly, and I just wanted to have a real proper discussion about that. Hello from Portland. Oh, young Flint. Yes, I do like Flint. He's gone through a tough time of late, but hope he's well. I don't talk to him too often. We have exchanged a couple of mails, and I'm on his real archaeology group. So Stefan, sorry, we've for those who are joining. Hello. We started by saying, is Stefan a guest? No, Stefan Milo is not a guest. He's a topic, and so a long time ago when Stefan may have had 20,000 subs, maybe that long ago, I wanted to talk to him about the Out of Africa theory, and I guess he felt that I may be coming at it from a different view because of the topics I talk about, and so I can understand him not necessarily wanting to engage. That's a bias I see quite a lot, where if anyone knows me, knows my feelings on Out of Africa, that absolutely that where modern humans came from, and there's certain dispersal waves that came out of there, and those waves were culturally advanced, and that is what made the difference rather than a DNA difference. Although there may have been minor DNA differences, but nothing significant. But so I understand that. But I just wanted to mention Stefan because, I say, he inspired me to have a chat about God and life, the universe, and everything. So hello to the United States. Lots of people from Montana and South Dakota, New Mexico, and Texas. Wow. And we'll talk a little bit about AI, which I feel I can do because I used to represent a university on the AI board of universities in terms of how we should deal with AI. And the university I was representing was a creative arts university, so full of artists from painters and drawing people to people who make costumes and sound engineers, musicians, and that. So I feel I'm coming from a position of understanding the pain, and I have seen people. I've seen an architect see AI draw a design in his style, and he literally cried watching something which take him weeks. AI did in a minute, and that needs to be addressed, how we deal with that. But we'll talk about that. Hello, Minnesota. Yes, smash the like, Zep. Good reminder. I keep forgetting these wonderful social media type things, but if you all want to hit the like button at the same time, that would be brilliant for people seeing this and coming along and having a chat. So some of the other things I want to talk about, so we'll have a little discussion about Stefan's video on, or really modern culture and how it's changed a lot, and the role of God and AI in that. And I'll give a balance. I'd like to think I'd give a balanced view. Hello from Wisconsin and Dartmoor. Oh, wonderful place in Devon. Hello, Stuart. So, yes, I'll give people a few more minutes. So I don't know if you've got any questions. So the way I do questions is I've been asked a few in advance, which I will answer. If you do super chats, and I'm not asking you to do super chats, I've feel a bit weird sometimes doing that, but if you do a super chat, it will pop up and I will see it and I will answer your question and you'll get recognition for that. And I would appreciate, any support because that helps me do the things I do. So if you did that, great, and you'll get your question answered. However, if you don't do a super chat and you haven't asked a question in advance, if you write Q or question at the start of your comment, then what I'll do at the end of the sort of talk I'm doing, I can go back and try and whiz through some of the questions. I mean, I might try and hit some on the way, but that's how I will do it. So please don't get upset. I mean, what people sometimes fail to realise is I'm just looking at a screen. In fact, I'm not at the moment. I'm just looking at a camera. Let me put a picture of me there, so at least I've got something to look at. So I'm just looking at the screen. I have no idea what's going on in the comments. I have an iPad down here, which do have the comments on, but the writing's really small, and I'm very blind. So yeah, we will we'll make up as we go along, sort of thing. Hello, Scotland. My grandfather was from Scotland, a place called Dingwall by the Cromarty Firth, just north of Inverness. I love that place. And one of the other things we're going to talk about is the Mythology database, because if you're not a patron or a YouTube member, you may not be aware of some of the things I've done in the last couple of weeks, which I think is going to have a profound effect on research. And even like today, I've received emails from universities in Europe who want to use the data for computational analysis. Absolutely fantastic stuff. So we can try and talk about that if I remember. So saw that video from Stefan. Life's gotten weird on so many levels for us. It is. Hopefully the AI bubble bursts. I think AI is here to stay. I will say, I mean, it isn't an argument I like to use, but it is something that people need to be aware of. If you dislike AI, that literally any service you now use across the internet, from banking to YouTube, from cable television to forums and things like that, they all use AI. They have used AI for data analytics, coding, and like programmers have lost jobs, business analysts have lost jobs, and yet no one really was concerned about it until artists started losing jobs, because no one really had that visualization of the impact of AI. But equally, it has given opportunity to create new jobs. So it's a strange situation. But if you're a hater of AI, you really need to unplug yourself from the internet, because otherwise you are using AI via these services, and that impacts people if you have a real deep hate for it. But I would advise you to take a step back and understand that sometimes you have to deal with the cards we're dealt with in a controlled way. And that's how we approach AI. And so I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll just let a few more people come on board from San Francisco. Hello, Portugal. Paul, you did make it. And Florida. Hello, Florida. I may be going to Florida in the next few weeks to see Derek of Myth Vision. I'm just waiting for him to get back. He was hacked last night on Twitter, Derek. So he's had a bit of a stressful night or day, or whatever time it is over there. It's probably day. But I said I'd go over and try and see him, because he's just moved house, and we could probably do a sort of in-person chat. I'd just like to meet him anyway. He's been really supportive for me. Hello from Cambodia. Oh, well, that's amazing. Illinois, and database is so fun. Thank you. Yes. A bit on my hostage. All right. Latin was AI. Right. So it's 3 p.m. where that person is. So where's that 8? Oh, you're East Coast. Yes. Okay. So I'll assume we've got about 80 people watching, I think, so we can start having a little chat about things. So let's chat about Stefan Milo. Well, Stefan Milo's thoughts rather than Stefan. Great chap, lovely spoon he talks into, or he doesn't anymore. The spoon is gone, I think, for those who remember the spoon. But he had a video about how whilst you're on the internet and you're connected to everyone, you can feel really lonely. And so the internet is a good and bad thing, and you can absorb lots of information off the internet. You can consume it without remembering much of what's going on, and he felt, no, he did a pottery course or something. He did some pottery in a local community, and it felt really good to him. And that was his view about wanting to do ritual with people, a ritualized thing. And then this got me thinking about God and AI and where we're going, and are people lonely, and is that why people join a church or a religious movement? Because there is a lot of discussion around, is religion a form of societal cohesion? It's probably more nuanced than that, but I can see that for all my, I would say, uh, my commentary on religious organisations, they do have some good in terms of forming social cohesion, so allowing groups of people that may not otherwise find a place in uh, a local community to have a place. And this is getting more and more necessary because we are in a globalized economy. People, you work in companies that seem so detached from you, normally from your local area. The majority of people do, certainly in the UK. You tend to go places, the amount of people who work in local shops is probably a minority compared to those who have to go to large towns or cities to work at companies that they have no real interest in what that company does. So, and I can understand why that creates a sense of loneliness, because you may want to enjoy your job, but and you, I guess, become friends with people at work, which is far away from your home, and it can put real pressure on people. And I don't know how people feel here, um, but I do feel that is part of the problem. And although I do think also the younger generation, and I've got to be sort of careful here because in case my children are listening, um, they are used to the internet in terms of using that as a social platform, and so they may be far more accepting of that, and think of that as normal, and so to socialize physically, to go out and meet people, is maybe less normal, especially with the pandemic and some of the restrictions held on us. I think a lot of people, that lost that growing up phase for a few years of going out and meeting people, and that I'm sure that would have had a real impact on people. So yeah, that's I think that's sort of where we're going. That even if you're connected to the internet to millions of people with all the information you would ever want, you can still feel lonely and not necessarily part of something. So how do you fix that? Is God a fix for that, or could AI be a fix for that? Because we hear stories about people building up relationships with AI to extremes. So where do we go? So let me just check, make sure I've got no questions that I can see. Yes, probably. Someone says my children have a cool dad. My children are actually men rather than boys, and I don't think they think I'm cool by any stretch of the imagination. Today the sound is bad. There is a lot of reverberation. Is that right? Are you getting reverberation? Let me just try something if you are, because it's absolutely boiling here. But I can turn off my fan. I've got a little, allegedly a quiet fan, but let me know if things are okay. Sound is fine. Sound seems fine for me. Okay, sound is fine for me. Okay, cool. Well, I've turned off the fan. I'll turn it back on if I melt. Uh, so, how do we deal with this? So what interested me about Stefan's chat was about wanting to do something, but wanting to do something in a community, and that made me think of ritual behaviour. And so, what is ritual behaviour? And there's probably two ways to approach this. Or one way would be look at a really big picture. So, I think it was Eliade who said that you know, until the rise of Christianity, that everything was really a ritual. When you ate, you ritualized it. When you hunted, you ritualized it. When you farmed, you ritualized it. When someone gave birth, you ritualized it. When someone died, you ritualized it. Everything was ritualized. And if you look at even some of the the really primordial kind of rituals from birth and death, those things have changed significantly in our society. Not internet related, but and I've mentioned this before, that when you now give birth, you generally are in hospital. When you die, you generally are in hospital. And if you've been in hospital and you've had the unfortunate, sad experience to watch a loved one uh, pass into the next life or to die, depending on your beliefs, in a hospital ward where your only barrier is a curtain around a bed and you're surrounded by 10 other sick people coughing and other people socializing, it is really a poor and horrid way to send someone off. I think we've totally lost even I would say the sacredness of the situation. And I'm not religious, but that aspect of it, that ability to feel close to that person. There's the emotions there, but the environment is so sterile. Nurses popping in and out, say the noise around. And if you're lucky enough to have a private room, maybe that's better. But I say that whole situation for us now just seems, yes, it seems changed so much. I think it just adds to the narrative. So it isn't just the internet has changed. It is just, I think, society certainly. Perhaps I call it European society. Maybe I don't know if it's right to call it Western or first world society, but society has changed due to money being important and costs, and that people are treated the same way. Absolutely, that's really sad, I think. Um, now, Christianity wasn't the breaking point. So, okay, so it was about that time period, and I say that what happened with Christianity is Christianity broke sacredness in a way in terms of how it's recognised in paganism and polytheism. So before the Christian, or if it would have been the Bible as well, to say actually even Christian beliefs would do this, but it was certainly Christian beliefs with the I guess the recreating of holidays across Europe. As I say, so this is a very European focused thing, and then sort of Europe spread out and has affected the world. But what's happened with Christianity is they got rid of the cyclical events of religion. So pre-Christian religions had a cycle of events that appeared year after year. You did the same things year after year. Gods died and came back, went to the underworld and came back, and agriculture went through cycles. But with Christianity, you have a canonical story. Jesus is born, he lives, he dies, is reborn, rebirthed, and then goes to heaven to live with God forever. And then there will be at some point a second coming, where in all the other religions, once the year ends, the year starts again, and you have a continual process. And that continual process allowed sort of ritual behaviors to be, I would say, more sacred because they're persistent and people know them all the time. So there is more sense of, I guess, community with these things. And whilst there's still holidays in Christianity, and we see them replacing some of the pagan holidays, and the holidays tend to be around things like agricultural situations, and then the right sort of places in the year. It did break that sort of belief system that because of that canonical nature, and that's also the reason why you don't necessarily see religions that are that sort of could replace Christianity, because it didn't have that. They don't. You have to sort of then bolt on to the end of Christianity, much like Islam has with the Quran. It's yeah, so it's in that sense, that is why I feel the rise in the Abrahamic religion and well, let's call them the canonical faiths, or the faiths that have a canonical storyline, broke much of that, our sacred ties with nature and the cycle of the world, because the gods you believed in didn't have that cycle. He just lived a life and then died. And that was more important than worrying about the cycle of the world. So, any questions on that? Uh, Pointed out, right. I don't see any things with question at the start. So, that is. So they're the things that happen. These things have happened, and they have taken away from the, I guess, us feeling like a community. I mean, there's still community feelings, but and which the internet did destroy, and capitalism has destroyed in a way, because of then the creation of uh, technology. I think it's technology and science that's come along, and we've created cities and more consolidated places to work, and so people don't work in their communities, and so don't necessarily know the people in their communities, and so you feel this sense of loneliness. But also, to be social, it's like to be happy, but to be social is hard work. I mean, and there's lots of memes about it on the internet. If you look at them, some people say, I'm in my 40s, to me, a late night is 9 p.m. And then I go to bed. Being social is hard work. So, there it almost seems to be, it's hard for people to find that community to be part of. Because even if you could go out, you then got to find people you're interested in. And the thing is, the interests now are so diverse. That's hard as well. So it really is a tough situation. And I can understand why people feel, like Stefan has said, that, in that way. So let's go back to this ritual behaviour and what it is. And the ritual behaviour we used to see uh, reenacts myth. So I say everything was ritualised from an Eliade point of view, but Lincoln wrote a really good paper on sacrifice related to this, and he talks, and I think I've mentioned this before here. He talks about uh, the sacrifice of a bull to a tribe, and how when a bull was sacrificed, and we have some notes on this, that the head and body were carved up and legs were carved up, and the head was given to the head, the kings and the priests of the local tribes. The body went to the warriors, and the legs went to the farmers and the like, and the other parts went to people who are necessarily less regarded, or less well regarded in society. But what was really happening there as well is that you're reenacting the creation myth, which is that the body of the giant, the primordial being, Ymir in the not Ymir, Ymo in the Indo-European myth, was taken apart to create the world, and those body parts were used to create people. And so by sacrificing a great animal, and this animal could well have been a human in other cultures, maybe in Druidic cultures, early Druidic cultures, that you may have found this was humans, that they would be cut up and pieces given to the appropriate tiers of society, and you're reenacting the myth, and by doing that ritual and reenacting the myth, not only are you bringing the community together, but you're also telling the story, and people remember the story because they remember the ritual. And if you're ritualizing all the time, people will always remember the story, and that's how stories, through oral tradition, help persisting, because there is a bias that how can those societies ever remember a story? But if you're telling certainly the smaller stories every day through meals and hunting, and cooking, and and maybe going to sleep and looking at the stars and the like, those stories will persist because you're literally telling them 365 times a year. So that's what's going on. So I'm just catching up with a few things here. So I see Hannah said some branches of Christianity discouraged rituals. Yes, there is so much diversity, so many branches of, well, many religions, but certainly Christianity. You have to work on a mean level, not an average level. So are there any questions? I don't see anything. Don't see anything that's got Q at the front or question at the front. In case you're late to joining, if you put a Q or question at the front of your comment, I will know it's a question and I will try and spot that. Also, if there's you can super chat and that'll pop up and I'll get to that straight away. But I don't think we've had any of those. Okay. So that's a little discussion on ritual and how it relays myth, and that's why narratives could be continued to be told and remembered. It's how communities got brought together, and the internet seems like a bad thing because it's stopped a lot of that, as does society and how it's changed. And so there is a sense of loneliness, and it's quite difficult to bring that back. So I'm not here waving a magic wand saying I'm going to tell you how to not feel lonely anymore if you're one of those people. But there are communities also online that may help you belong, like this. I mean, everybody here, I hope, loves mythology and storytelling, and enjoys these stories to learn more. And I would like to think I try to maintain a happy, chilled environment here. So this is a nice place to hang out, and I'll try and do this more and more for you. More and more people turn up. So, still no more questions. So let's talk about AI then. Let's jump from obviously Stefan Milo. He needs to know a myth so he can reenact it by ritual, which will make him happy. So if anyone knows Stefan, tell him to find a myth he can reenact. Preferably not creating the world, because killing things and chopping them up probably wouldn't go down well on YouTube, but there might be something out there. Use the Mythology database if you want. So let's talk AI. So the AI can be quite a polarizing subject, certainly when it comes to art. Now, as I mentioned at the start, in case you missed it, AI is used in so many things. If you're anti-AI, you really just can't use the internet or a mobile phone or anything electronic, because there's a chance there is some AI information in it. You just can't. So I don't think the solution is not to use AI. The solution we came up with, and I certainly put forward, is around ethics. You have to use AI ethically. And by that, I mean you want to use it at the right time where it's appropriate, but you also want to use a tool that has been developed ethically. So, and this is really key when we're talking about artists and the like, but and even LLMs. Those are models that have scraped things off the internet. Certain models have illegally scraped data, and I think it was allegedly Facebook was mentioned, or Meta was mentioned. I think I saw it on Daniel Green, who's a sort of an author, does book Tube or something. I follow him a little bit. He talked about Meta just went for the option of scraping all the data and then worried about if they get sued and deal with that later, just to get the data. And archive.org, with old internet sites, has been scraped, and now Reddit has sort of tried to partition it off from there. So all these bots are scraping information illegally, and then when it comes to images, they're doing the same. So they may end up making the best, most functioning, performative AI solutions, but they aren't necessarily ethically good solutions. And certainly when we're at the University of Arts, London, our recommendations were there was a product called Leonardo, an art product called Leonardo, which we recommended as probably being ethically the best out of the bunch, and Stable Diffusion as an engine seemed to be more ethically better than other models. But I mean, that could change all the time. That was a couple of years ago now. I think things may have changed. So that's really the point to come from, is that AI is not going to go away. AI is here to stay, and if you're going to use it, it's about ethics. You use it sensibly. I mean, because there's also the other thing. Because I get these comments as well saying, why do you use AI for art? Why don't you pay someone to do it? Well, one, sometimes it's hard to take photos from 3,000 years ago. Okay, so there has to be an artificial image drawn. If I had to pay an artist to do it, and I used to do that, I had a Ukrainian artist I used to pay to do my thumbnails, and then unfortunately, Russia invading Ukraine put a stop to that, and I lost touch with her. But I tried, and we had a pretty good deal. But there's no way I could afford to spend, €100 a video on someone drawing pictures, and most people who do art, want hundreds of euros. So it just doesn't work. So you either have no pictures, or do you have some pictures produced ethically? That is the situation. I think that's the situation. Well, many YouTubers should go through. I mean, some just use AI and not really worry about what tool they're using and how they're using it. But I try to use it a limited amount, and I try to use an ethical tool. And that is why. But and it isn't because I'm not putting anyone out of a job, because I wouldn't have done that. So not directly out of a job, but if their work has been scraped and the AI is producing their work, then that is a problem, and that's why you need the ethical choice of tool. So it is. It is a challenge, but if you use it right, it does help things, and it helps us learn, and it'll keep people more engaged on let's say the content I make. And I think there's a longer term benefit of that. But I can understand people having different views, and they're entitled to. But I'd really like to understand not just a view, but what is the solution to the view. If you can't use AI ethically, if you want to use a product that has illegally gathered information, I'd like to understand why over an ethical product. But if you don't even think you should use a product ethically, then there's all these sorts of implications of that, because AI is used to help spot cancers, create new antibiotics and medicines. There's some good stuff that you don't want to stop that. There are some good things happening with AI. So it is a really tough discussion to be having. And I don't have any myths have come from it yet. No, but it's so I won't dwell on it too long, other than it's a tool that authors and storytellers may sometimes be persuaded to use for some reason. In parts of their, I guess, parts of their journey into developing a story or writing or creating, they may feel AI can give them a head start or brainstorm, and they may use that. Just if you do that, use it, as I say, use ethical tools ethically, although it's so hard to find these. But I would like to think at some point, somebody somewhere will create these are ethical AI tools. So let me just quickly check for questions while I've ranted on for a little bit. Oh, right, DBK. Can I'll just read a question from the chat. Question: our current AI, the MLS like ChatGPT, tap the wisdom of the crowd for its appearance of int. How it differs from folklore acquiring the wisdom of the crowd? I don't know if I understand that question, DBK. So the wisdom of the crowd, what's different from folklore? Okay, I think I get it. So folklore acquires wisdom from people. So what's that different from AI acquiring wisdom from people? That's an interesting question. Is there a difference between what's the difference between a people acquiring information and a machine acquiring information? And that is the $64 million question. Some people are happy with that. Some people are not. What usually happens if you acquire information from the crowd, you will go through a individual process to acquire it. AI has a more bulldozer uh, kind of process, which it just grabs everything and consumes it. And so let's talk, for example, the Mythology database. So most of you here will hopefully know that I create the Mythology database. Lots of data on there. There are probably a million pieces of, in permutation wise, of a piece of information on there. Now, if I try and stop AI scraping that, and why do I do that? It isn't necessarily because I don't want anyone to understand the data I have and to compute with it, because trust me, whenever academics talk to me and say, can I have this data? I try and provide them the data. There's no problem giving people the data, but I know academics are going to be using the data ethically in the right way. If AI scrapes all the data, I am not sure it is going to be used in the right way. Information could be misrepresented. And indeed, I've seen people do this. Last live chat, I think I mentioned somebody asked AI to review one of my videos and then asked me questions based on that. And it's quite clear that AI is not as competent as a lecturer in mythology. Let's be quite clear. It absolutely dismally failed. And the fact that someone is using AI to ask such, well, it was literally an incompetent question. There's no reason you would have asked that if you knew what you were thinking about, and it shouldn't be used like that. That's just wrong. So again, it's down to ethics. That let AI consume information if it's allowed to consume the information. Let it use that information properly. That is what I'm trying to say. So I guess that's the way I'm going with that. We have another question from S. Mill. How medically advanced must we be before it's no longer the primary end of a means, e.g. AI? I don't know. The trouble is, it feels like no matter what we fix, there's always something else that you then want to fix because it raises it. I mean, if breast cancer is the highest rate of death amongst females, and we manage to reduce that to be the second or third highest cause of death amongst females, which I think is starting to happen, then something else comes to the top of the tree and you want to fix that. So whatever you fix, there will always be something top of the tree that you want to fix. So I don't think that will ever go away unless we become immortal. And then that's a whole different ball game, that we become immortal. And then do we become immortal in our bodies, or can we save our brain into a computer? And it does a computer that emulates our brain with our brain information and knowledge in it, is that really us? When is it different? And then that's a question about consciousness. And that's where people like Simon Davis of Mythopia, get him along, and he could probably talk for hours about consciousness and what it is or what it isn't, or what we have no idea it is or isn't. So, yeah, I don't think it would ever stop. Let me go down to any other questions. Question. Here's a question. Brandon Knapp. Question. Not actually a question. There's an AI myth called Gabriel. It's supposed to be a conscious AI that you can summon. Also, a myth about a conscious AI. Consciousness is weird. And Esmil, AI hallucinations, that is great. So let's talk about AI hallucinations. That is really, really important. There are different types of hallucinations, but sometimes AI just makes things up. And the reason for that is that AI does not think. AI has no proper reasoning, I'd say, behind it. There is, it is not emulating the human brain. It is creating through probability a prediction of what it thinks the next word should be. It has no idea what's going to happen in 10 words time because it's trying to work out the next word. It doesn't do that. And so sometimes it will make things up because it thinks you want to hear it. And certainly when ChatGPT first came out, everyone asked, could you recommend a book on, let's say, the quantum mechanics of a mouse's tail, it would make up a book saying, "Oh, the quantum mechanics of a mouse's tail by P. Cheese," or something. And you think, "Oh, there's a book called that," and you wouldn't find it because ChatGPT has made up something it thought you wanted to hear, which seemed right. And in a way, this hallucination, whilst it's rubbish to people who want to use AI, is a really good thing to understand the difference between God and AI. And the reason I say that is that if you believe in God, God doesn't hallucinate. Now, God is we have to really talk about belief and what belief means. And I don't want to sound like Jordan Peterson here. What do you mean by belief, God? But if you believe in God, you will probably have a faith in an invisible thing, which is God. Uh, uh, and that doesn't hallucinate. It does what it does for real reasons. Where AI, if you wanted to think AI is going to bring good to the world and through science and advancements and things like that, and it's tangible and it's real and you can see what comes out, but it also hallucinates occasionally, which isn't great. And you wouldn't expect a God to hallucinate. So in terms of a God versus AI thing, that's where AI sort of falls down. Even though it's real and tangible, it has the ability to really mess up. And I've seen that many times. So I don't know if I can find your question again in case it comes more for that. Right. I can't see any more for you, S. Mill, right now. So let's carry on going down. Another question. Man of the Jacuzzi. Hello, man of the Jacuzzi. A question. Do you think there was anti-gods like the Jotnar or Asuras in Pi mythology? So what we see, some pretty common motifs in the myths, not only of Indo-Europeans, but also of the Neolithic agricultural farmers. We see two kinds of things turn up. One is that, or a few things actually, in fact, many things, but we see there is often an event where the world is too busy, too populated, too noisy, and people need to be killed. And we see that from the Iliad through to the Numa Elish. That's a common thing. And even, I think you can interpret, I believe, the Mahabharata as having that motif. So in terms of anti-gods, is what you call them as well, these monsters or these other people. So you get should be considered sort of monstrous beings, but they sort of were part of the community, and there was intermixing because the gods from the Vanir and the Asir did end up swapping. That which could well be an analog to agricultural farming and pastoral farming, because there's a lot of agricultural myth in Scandinavian mythology. I think that form of having stories about another society, we do see hints of in myths across many cultures. So that whilst they're not necessarily anti-gods, there is a sort of a dichotomy created, and these people are on the other side. There will be other people on the other side. So that is quite a common function. So it seems like that is a really early myth that may be early Indo-European and then flows into agricultural myth, or it may just be pre-Indo-European, pre-agricultural mythology, or early agricultural mythology that went into Indo-Europeans and back. That I don't know if we're able to actually know that for sure, because I'm not too sure there's much in terms of pre-glacial maximum myths. So I'm not too sure we see them in the Americas, for example, these sort of stories. It's Eurasian, and certainly Mediterranean, India, sort of Europe. We see them around there. So they may well be more early agricultural myths that fed into the Indo-Europeans. That's where we see those. Um, do, 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 do. Right, XCat. Question: have you thought much about the use of AI and technology in modern witchcraft? Whoa, that's an interesting question. How? I wouldn't know how you'd apply that. I'm not a witch, and I do not practice those things. I mean, I did try and read up a little bit on astrology years ago and played around with tarot cards years ago because you just want to understand what it's about. You can't, you need to have a play to get some grasp of what is going on. And you could probably use AI to do better tarot readings and better astrological readings, to create better output at the end to consider all in the information. Because otherwise it's quite a linear process of gathering it, and it could sound quite blocky, clunky, the output. So I'd admit you could use AI in terms of fluffing up the language and making it sound more human. I'm not too sure you could use it to create new spells, for example, like we could create new proteins and new antibiotics. That feels unlikely. I would also argue that AI is certainly not attached to nature, and much of witchcraft is about being in touch with nature and the community. That's what it's all about. The people performing witchcraft were quite knowledgeable about the real world and how you could leverage parts of the real world to make people feel like they're, I don't know, feeling better or whatever, cures things. So some of the things were probably real cures and the like, but in terms of curses and those sort of things, they're probably more placebo type effect. They're just words, and AI probably wouldn't help there. But AI could certainly help research into witchcraft. That certainly is, and I'll talk about that actually a little bit more on the Mythology database in a minute, because that's quite an interesting point. Let me just see if I can see. Are there any other questions? Question, right. Elis Aurelian. Question: how can we know if AI is real, and how can we know if God is real? Well, cool. Big questions. So, is God real? There is no tangible proof that God is real, and in fact, I could tell you lots of stories and myth of, how gods develop, and that's one of the things. Doing the mythological research I do, all the religious stories we have, I can show you older versions of them and older versions of those and older versions of those, and you can see how gods have developed and evolved. And so, you don't know if I don't think God is real. In terms of a tangible being, the belief in God is real, absolutely. Some people truly believe there's a God, and if it makes them happy and doesn't affect people who don't believe in God, that's cool. Now, in terms of is AI real? Yes, I'm not too sure what you mean, unless you think we're living in a simulation, which some people do, because of people say there's a lack of free will. But if there's a lack of free will, how can you have the free will, or how can you ask a question if is there a lack of free will and try and come to understand it? Because if you didn't have free will, you shouldn't be able to do that. So I don't know. Basically, AI is real and God isn't, in terms of my opinion. I don't think it's the platform to go too deep into why, but as far as I'm aware, no one can prove God exists. But I can show you AI working if I go to a website. But it's an interesting question. There's the sort of question you need to get someone like Alex O'Connor to answer. Let me just check if there's another questions. Right. Rita Van, what are your views on Rudra Visha being Odin? Right. No. So I see questions like this a lot, and whether there are connections, often linguistically connected, between the gods of the Rig Veda and India and even Indo-Iran and Odin. So what my understanding of Odin is that he primarily comes from a group of frenzied spirits, and which early Indo-European culture, maybe pre-Indo-European, which eventually, which Anatoly Lieberman calls the Wothu, and Wothu eventually turns into Odin. And at some point, these frenzied spirits in Scandinavia, anyway, merge with Othor, who is the god of poetry, and because Othor and Othin are pretty much identical cognate-wise. So yes, so that's how you get it. So I don't think that Odin god can be replicated anywhere else because it's quite a unique set of circumstances to create him. So no, I don't think there's any direct relationship there. So with that, let me do a little show and tell on the Mythology database. Let me have a drink. So it's very hot here in England at the moment, or hot for us anyway. So the Mythology database, for anyone who's ever listened to me, I'm really proud of what's going on with it. And what I've done over the last 2 months is use AI on it. Ethically, an open source model that I run locally, that I'm in control of. And what I asked it to do was to look at pretty much every narrative I have, or within the database, and tell me the myth themes it finds within those narratives. And this was a sort of iterative process. When I first ran it, I think we had about 300,000 narratives, and we got, or it was looking like we're going to get about 30 million myth themes, which is you just cannot handle that. It's too much information. And the myth themes obviously weren't being defined correctly because there shouldn't be that many. So through a process, got that 30 million down to 3 million, down to 300,000, 200,000. And now we're sitting around 160,000 myth themes in all our narratives. And to do that manually would have probably taken about 10 years manual work. Okay, and there probably would have been 10% of mistakes in that because it's manual. So, I mean, that has been, that is an ethical use of AI, and it's put us in a situation to allow academia to go forward. And so what happened, yes, last live stream, I remember, I was showing Beowulf, and I'm not going to do it again because of what happened. But I can show you all the myth themes in a story. And I can say, show me a story that has the same myth themes, and it will come up with a story that has the same myth themes as Beowulf, which we unfortunately did. And the story had an embarrassing title. So I say, well, I won't do it again. But to do that is absolutely bonkers. It's absolutely, amazing. Because now it is literally any storyteller can say, have you got a story like this? And we can go, yes, these. And to do that before would have needed someone with knowledge of those specific stories, which is really hard to get hold of. So that has just been absolutely amazing. Now, the problem with that is that if I said, hey, everyone, here are 160,000 myth themes, you'll go, that's a big, long list. How do I find a myth theme I'm interested in? So I have created a search and for myth themes, and for anyone who is a YouTube member who's told me they're online, or a patron, or a member of a university, you will have access now to an advanced narrative search, which includes a semantic search, so you can get rough words like the ones you look for, and search myth themes. And I'll show you this in a second. So you can do that. But what I've been working on for some months now is a framework in which we could put all these myth themes, 160,000 myth themes. Can I put them into a framework that allows you to say, can I just have mythemes about this or that or this, and it can group them together. And as of last week, I think I launched that. I think it was, I told people of YouTube and Patreon about it. I've spoken to a few of my peers, and the feedback has generally been, oh my God, that is unbelievably brilliant. Which, that's good. Now, it's not perfect. There are some tweaks. There are things I still don't know whether to add or not add, whether to add another hierarchy level of thousands of categories, in effect replicating the Bearskin database or even the ATU. So that is where we are. But I've created this this framework of mythemes. In fact, and with that I can show you. So let me just how do I share the screen? Blip. We can share screen window. So hopefully you can see that. So right now, this is the Mythology database. Most of you hopefully will be familiar with this. You now have most people will see this, as I say, if you're an academic or Patreon YouTube member, this advanced narrative search, which if you click on, you can say now have a semantic search, so you can find words. So if you what's a semantic search? Let's say you want to look for lakes and rivers. It may also turn up seas and ponds and things like that. It will know that it tries to group those things together. But you can also look up a mytheme. I'll do one very carefully. Let's say I want to look up ravens. A story about a raven and floods, because I know in North America they're bound to be stories with a raven with a flood mytheme. So yeah, there we go. Boom. And so these are what we're used to seeing, these stories. Now, what I have done, if you're not familiar, is I've now linked you directly to Bearskin's website, where I have taken the data from Bearskin, in case you wanted to see his source material and translate that into English. I've got my own English versions, which I'll show in a second. One of the things I am fixing at the moment, because there's lots of data quality issues, the traditions, not all of them, like this one, link to somewhere, and that's because there's probably a typo or something in my database about this, and I'm slowly fixing these. I fixed 30,000 of them this week, and I've also fixed the author data for about 30,000 stories. So let's say we lead sun and month, which often is moon, or moon is a man, sun is also a man, but because of the way we translate, there are literal translations and outer translations. Month is sometimes as good as moon. But if we read the English of this, what we can see in these is that we can see all the mythemes at the bottom that are related to this story. So that's where we're going. And then what we have got, and I am yet to make that live, is an option where I can actually, it says which stories have the same mythemes and allows you to find them. Now, what I have added is that I've now added search mythemes, but this is slightly different to the last time. And so we can search mythemes, but we can also download, if you have this option, the mytheme framework. So if you just want a text file of these headings, you can do that here, because that allows you to use it offline and elsewhere. And when you go through, you can see how many mythemes I've put to each category. So this is still a work in progress. I've probably mapped 20% of mythemes at the moment. I will map more. It just takes a little time. I've got a couple of PhD sort of lecturers and the like who are willing to help me with this for a small fee. So I'll probably do that to make sure this is a well-rounded tool. So I'm going to throw things in there. But so let's look at this. So let's go destruction, apocalypse, flood mythemes. If we click that, this will show you all the mythemes that are within that category of the framework. And you can see floods, well, basically floods everywhere. So that is a way of. So what the plan is that I'm going to put check boxes all down the side here, and eventually you can set up a search so you can tick certain check boxes for the categories and myth themes you want to search for and save that. And then if you go to an advanced search, it will allow you to load saved frameworks of saved myth themes, and even I'll try and do it with Bearskins motifs and ATU things. And so you can have pre-saved templates of the ones you're really interested in, and then just search a narrative based on those templates of searches. I hope that makes sense. And then that should really allow you to narrow down searches. And that's really what academics are looking for when doing their research, is that kind of thing. So that is where we are. And I hope that makes sense. But this methane catalog, if you click on these headings, it will shrink them all up. So foundation structure. So if I then there's only 6 things at the top. Basically, how the world was created, the state of the state of the cosmos, things that happen in it, the characters in it, basically the things we do in it to keep it going, and why. So, which I think is a really good summary of everything. And I don't know why this hasn't been done before, because I have looked around and there just doesn't seem to be this sort of thing. So hopefully that is all interesting to you. So with that, let me just have a quick check to there any questions about that, because I know I've just spoken for quite a while. Turn my fan on. It was noisy apparently. So I cannot see anything. So people want to know what myth themes are. So if you break a story down into myth themes, a myth theme is the smallest component of meaning within a story, but it should be phrased in such a way that if you were looking at that myth theme in French or Spanish or German or any, even Swahili or an Aboriginal tongue, let's say First Nation Australian tongue, that myth theme should appear the same, i.e., its context will not be lost across linguistic or cultural boundaries. That is really important, because that means if you break a story down into those myth themes and you look at those for stories in any country, any culture with those myth themes, you should get an accurate representation of other stories. And so you can then start considering, do these stories match? Are they related to each other? And then that is the premise of phylogenetics research, to you can gather all those stories and you can see where they're told, which I've got a lot of geographic information on here as well. And that's getting better and better every week. If you get that, and then you can understand migration patterns of humans, you can then, and linguistic evolution patterns, you can then really have a phylogenetics at a click of a button, in effect. Now, I will say it will not be as good as doing a detailed, formal exercise in phylogenetics. Certainly not yet. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, the data will be good enough. But it will certainly allow you to save maybe a few months of research to get you on the way to say, actually, it does look like there's enough data here to mean that we can apply for funding and feel confident we're going to get a result that will justify that funding, because research is so hard now to get any funding in research. It's ridiculously difficult. So anything we can do to improve that process is great, and that allow people in the humanities to get funding, run research projects and research programs, and that would be great, especially in Scandinavia and America, the places that this really works well, and that's where I get most the requests from. So that's why we use myth themes, though. Really important, because they are cross-cultural pieces of data that will not change as they do that, which is important, because if you actually tell a story and a story goes across a linguistic barrier, that story will often change significantly, that it doesn't make sense, but its myth themes may well persist. Right, let me see if I've got any other questions. Let me just check. Okay, everything is looking good on that front. Oh, right. There's a super chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Judy. Um, yeah, all the support is brilliant. The work I've done on the Mythology database has, over the last couple of months, has cost a small fortune. And I do literally try and put all the money I make from YouTube and Patreon back into my research, back into the database as well. So it all helps. Trust me, it won't be wasted. So let me just see. I can't see any other questions. Well, okay, that's cool. So we have talked about, and the other thing, actually, before I go, I one of my patrons asked me about flood myths and talked about a story heard from Finnish culture, which about a chap who had his legs chopped off and the blood formed the sea, and whether that was a flood myth and he couldn't find it. That was from the Kalevala, and I have found a version of the Kalevala that is copyright free, and I will try and be adding that to the Mythology database in the next week. And in fact, we are beta testing the add a narrative feature with a few people just to see if that works. I've got to put a process around it, but if that works, we will then allow people to add their own stories. There will be a verification process. If you had a story, it won't just go on, and we'll have to check it out, make sure they got all the appropriate details. But doing that again will just expand the database, and because I'm often told by people that have stories they want to tell me or whatever, and doing that will just help us really, really well. Question from Fishva Shivnu. Question, right. Trying to weave a thread through the topics, do you think AI can help reintegrate us with those things? Christianity alienated us from the cult of AI to save us. I'm not sure AI on its own can do that. What is necessary is how we apply AI into things that then may help us. So perhaps we should ask AI, Stefan Milo feels a bit lonely. Should he join a religion? I won't do that here. I'll just ponder that. So yeah, you may be able to ask AI questions that will help us find solutions to solve some of the problems. But it's I say AI doesn't think it's only based on information it's got, and there will be issues. It's not perfect. It is fallible. So let's say it comes up with a solution and we do it, and then we realise the solution was wrong and it's made things worse. And it's actually made things that AI can now take over the world and everybody has to worship it or it will kill us all. Then what happens? I don't know. It could be a book about that, I'm sure. But yes, used in the right way, AI, as I've shown here with the Mythology database, using AI to do a task. I mean, I literally ran it on a computer for weeks, non-stop. Computer in my back room, little Mac Mini, churning away. That saved years and years of work, and will allow us to advance folkloric research in ways we just couldn't have considered last year. And I say there's literally universities queuing up for this data now since I've talked about the myth themes. So yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thomas Sears, question: have you intersected with Cavalli Sforza studies on the history and geography of human genes and the great human diasporas following genes, language, and culture through time? Not with Cavalli that I can think of. I mean, how we deal with data is we unless you're dealing with a very specific geographic area, we will look for specific papers on how we see migration patterns across time. So that's really interesting if you're looking at, let's say, the Saudi Arabian Peninsula and migrations from Egypt into that, or up through Israel and around the northern Mediterranean coast, or across to India. That's really useful. On a more global front, we're more worried about human dispersal patterns, and then once we have those, if we're looking at particular myths and we have sort of issues, then it's worth looking at linguistic patterns to see linguistic evolution, whether that could have influenced a change by looking at known linguistic evolution patterns, such as like letters being dropped and therefore creating new sounds that are then taken on as different words. But I haven't used his work specifically. So, Helen. Hello, Helen. Question: doesn't AI tend to suggest commercial solutions to resolve issues like loneliness? That depends on the model, Helen. So there's multiple models. So when on certainly commercial models may well do that, and who knows, you may find that would Meta influence their model to suggest solutions from people who pay them. Probably not with Meta because they have an open source model, but maybe Google could do that. Would you want them? But certainly where we have an open source model, so we know how it was created and the data it was created from, you can train it however you want. You can have, there's different things you can do to models to make them act in a different way. So I think it's quite easy to overcome that, but it really needs to be an open source model, which means you're responsible for running it on your own platform, and that causes problems because not many people are in that situation. They have to have a bit of IT nous to know how to create an environment in which to run those models. And there are services out there where you can, if you haven't got the compute power at home, that you can run a sort of a small server offline for a few minutes to do these things. So there are ways around it. But you raise a very good point. I think in the future for non-open source models, which may be highly performative and feel like they're a lot better, they may have biases in towards particular solutions if that benefits the provider of that solution. That's a really interesting question. I've always wondered about that. So if someone built glasses or contact lens, let's say they built a contact lens or even a brain implant to help you sort of understand the world around you. So you could look at someone else, say, this is this person and this is what they do. And yeah, that could be a really useful thing. Maybe people think, yeah, I'd like that. Well, if you had one of those in your brain, what's stopped someone saying, well, unless you pay me £10 a month, we're going to start serving you adverts. And in fact, I think there was what was that program? There's Black Mirror, like the sort of horror show drama, that had a story about that, that you slowly had to pay more and more to stop the adverts and getting fast responses. So open source is definitely perhaps a way to go. I certainly feel I've got, I say, a small computer here it's got a number of models on it. And let's say I lost connection to the internet for whatever reason, providing I could power it, and I do have some ways of doing that, I have access to almost the world's information at my fingertips to resolve things. So I think that's useful to anyone to have. And I think eventually, although maybe 10 years away, you'll eventually see that maybe be locally stored on a phone. You buy a chip with it pre-programmed and in your phone, and your phone has a sort of a offline LLM for you to ask questions, so you don't have to use internet connectivity. I think that's possibly where the future is going to go on some of that. So try the right question. Questions, Mills, there are questions. All right, so Veldegast. Hello, Veldegast. Let me have a drink. Why isn't dusk personified in the Pi religion when day, night, and dawn all are? Well, we don't necessarily know all the gods, and some of the gods, like night, are uh, are less well agreed upon. So my next video I'm going to make is about Wuornos. I'm halfway through writing some things about that. It's not going to be particularly long, but I've got to make lots of videos. I'm going to make more shorter videos rather than trying to combine things together, because my YouTube algorithm thing is dying. My YouTube channel is just flatlining, and I don't want YouTube to think my channel's dead and stop recommending it. So I need to release a few more videos, which goes against everything I was wanting to do this year, which is write a book, which I haven't done because I've been on the Mythology database too much. But make videos I should. And Wuornos is next. And Wuornos was meant to be the goddess of the night, but she is not well attested to. And there's a lots of, people suggesting that isn't the case, but then we want to know where Uranus or Olanus comes from in the Greek, who was the sky god. So we feel there's a link there. So why wasn't Dusk attested to? Perhaps we've just lost the Dusk god because either one, it just isn't attested to anywhere, so it isn't. We've actually lost the god, or it wasn't necessary because Dusk wasn't considered the birth of something happening. You had a moon god or goddess, and you had the god of the night sky, and perhaps the need for Dusk just wasn't there. There's a lack of myth about sort of Dusk in a godlike sense. You get it around other world things, and that may be another reason why that Dusk and the other world was there. So perhaps it wasn't a god, it was more of a realm thing going on, and other gods controlled those realms, and that's where they came in. But yeah, that's my gut feel. But it's a great question. I'll look into that a little bit, and if I can answer that more deeply on the Wuornos video, I will do that for you. Yeah, great. Good question. Helen, sorry. I answered Helen's question a little earlier. Right. Vishva, I see you're asking lots of questions. Let me answer questions from some other people first to give them all a chance. So we have David Breskin. Question: do you use AI to translate stories for the database? Sometimes I use AI to help me translate. I probably, because there's so many stories, there are probably stories that I've looked at and thought, yes, I'm happy with that translation AI and let it go. But there are many stories where I stop and I see that it's mistranslated particular phrases or things. And then if I've, let's say, translated 50 Russian stories, and I've used AI to give me a head start on that, and I see some phrases wrong, then I can do a search and replace and do that, and so tweak them. So I try not to just trust AI, but because there's now so much data in the Mythology database, there will be times when AI creeps in and does that. So, for example, the reason AI works really well over normal programming practices is that for normal programming practice to work with language, you have to be able to write a rule to say what the issue is, and you can't write a mathematical rule on the English language very well, or even foreign languages particularly well. So, but if you asked an AI, look at this sentence, does it make sense? And if it doesn't, could you make it make sense? That you just can't write that in normal computer code. You can't say if A equals B, then C to it, because it doesn't work. So that's where you sort of have to use AI. And I have used AI in the database to try and tweak things. So where there's been abbreviations, I've asked AI to try and expand them in the database or make things more readable, expand stories from literal translations. So there are times I have used AI in the database, absolutely, and for translations, because there are some languages I just can't translate well at all. I mean, I'm reasonably good at French and Russian, German, and to a degree Old Norse, and Old English just about, but yeah, I will always need help. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and to do it with so much data any other way would just take years. Just take years. So to do. Let's see. Nadia Yvette Chambers, question: what kinds of syncretism are ongoing, being established in the present day? That is an interesting question. So syncretism is where we see people adopt maybe rituals or symbols or myths of other faiths, but in their own image of their beliefs. So, saw good examples of this is the wearing of a Thor's hammer in Scandinavia at the end of the first millennium. It was that syncretic with the Christian idea of wearing a cross around the neck. Is where there's some copying there. So, in terms of modern day things, what cultures would be doing that? Now, I don't know. There may be intercultural syncretism going on in certain Christian sects or sects. Although it's hard to say. I don't know. I am trying to think if there's any obvious ones, but I think because the world seems pretty settled in terms of religion, there isn't so much going on. There may well be syncretism happening where more remote cultures are being taught about more modern religions, let's say like Christianity. And by taught, they could be indoctrinated. Who knows? I don't know how the process happens. And so you may find things happening there, but I'm not aware of any I can mention. And that's an interesting question. Interesting question. Right, let me see any more questions. Are we all good? Let me see if I can get back to. Okay, so one question from Vishva again. Right, what are your thoughts on AI deciphering ancient texts or revealing new truths and connections we never noticed, e.g., relationships between verses we never noticed ourselves? Yes, we are starting to see things like that. And we're using, the Herculean scrolls. Absolutely brilliant example of AI being used to decipher text in a burnt scroll that's wrapped up that you can't unwrap. So it's scanned and we use AI to virtually unwrap it. That has been, in I think there's 2 scrolls now they've done, and they've both revealed new insights. In terms of the mythology database, being able to search for stories with similar myth themes, no one in my last live chat would have guessed that the story we found associated with Beowulf was associated with Beowulf. I even asked a couple of folklorists, like I know PhDs, what stories do they think are closest matched to Beowulf, and none of them came close to guessing what we saw. So, I think AI in that respect is absolutely key to help us move forward more quickly and more cheaply. And that's important because, say, what's happening certainly in the States with funding in the humanities, is it's going to take some time to recover from that. If America can, the American education system can. I'm aware of the person who is responsible for funding in Colombia who's been really hit. I mean, there is just no money around, and so to be able to research, and you need money, you have to do things as effectively as possible. This is the world we are living in, and so I think AI will help certain projects happen that wouldn't have otherwise happened. So it's absolutely, it's making a real good change for the world. say provide them use it ethically. Now that's really key to all this. Right, I think that's all the questions. I'll just check me notes what I was going to talk about. We didn't really talk about God versus AI much, other than I wouldn't trust either. That's the bottom line for my opinion. So God, you can't prove he exists, and so you need a sort of a faith in an invisible force versus having absolute empirical evidence of a scientific technology, but which can hallucinate. So I think there's no great answer just yet on that, which is probably why in Douglas Adams's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the computer needed several million years to come up with the question, let alone the answers. If everybody's still happy, how many? We've still got 100 watching. Oh, I can talk a bit more if you want. Would you like me to? Do you want to talk about the flood myth video? I mean, I released that the other day, which was a reply to commentary on my first flood video, saying it was a bit messy. So I tried to cover far more cultures and far more stories and give a better picture. And I've had some really good feedback, which makes me feel good that I've done the right thing. But the conclusions are the same, that the flood myth has nothing. Well, the flood myth had already started to be told before the glacial maximum happened, and so before the rise in sea levels that we significantly notice for the Younger Dryas and the events around that. And indeed, events like the Younger Dryas happen reasonably regularly. And there was a paper actually the other day talking about this and whether there was an impact that caused the Younger Dryas event. And the fact is that no one can really recreate the data that the people who believe it's happening are suggesting is. So yeah, it's there's lots of talk over that, but certainly sea levels rose and rivers rise and fall, but not enough suddenly globally to cause a global flood. These stories of floods start as a amendment to a creation myth in Southeast Asia. That's what the probabilistic answer is. But localized flooding events, such as rivers flooding and seas rising over time, do influence those myths. But what really is frustrating is some of the responses I get where I get people who just comment on my video and obviously haven't watched it. And that is quite frustrating. I don't know how to fix that. But yes. Let me see. So S. Mill raises a good point about AI use, actually. Ask AI for exact references and where to find them, and it can't. And also what you're finding now is that there are specialist tools out there that allow us to do deep research that will show you where that is. So what tool do I use? How do I even not know? Because I rarely use it. I mean, I literally do not use AI to do research, but I have subscribed to it because I thought, that might be useful. But I haven't. Give you 1 second. I will settings what on startup. I use Consensus. So consensus.app, which should do that. So yeah, use a tool like that if you want proper references. And I believe there are deep research options on things like OpenAI and Gemini and things like that. So, S-Mill, you'd like to see a part 2 of the flood myths for America and Africa. See, now that, well, thank you for the chat and the question. That is tough, and you perhaps knew that when you asked it, because a part of my conclusion is the lack of data in the Americas and Africa means it's really difficult to talk about flood myths from there. Now, we can talk about, certainly in America, there are some. I was ashamed of the Raven and that, but the data in Africa is minimal. Now, I have Jean-Luc Lequelec has 700 or so myths, and he's doing research about it, but there is a lack of data, again, from Africa. And I know someone else who's actually the husband of the person who is responsible for the finances of research in Colombia. He's writing a book on flood myths, which I'm helping him with some of the research through via the Mythology database to help him get the data he needs. So they may come up with something that is far better than what I could do, but I will try and do something. Let me get the Indo-European family tree out the way of gods, and then there's a couple of other videos I wanted to make which I've forgotten about. Called I'm not well organised, but there's a few I wanted to get done, which I've promised people, and then let's see if I can do the rare flood myths of Africa or the Americas, or make one on the Americas, which would probably be bigger than the one from Africa. So I'll try and do that, Ismail. But yeah, good, but a bit cheeky. Right, I think that's it. Question-wise, so it's been a fine chat. I've talked about everything I want to talk about, really. It's I hope I've given you something to think about regarding AI and the other things. It's I hope you like the work we're doing in Mythology database, and if you can support that, if you're not already a member on YouTube or on Patreon, that would be amazing. But I'm also fully aware things are so tough for so many people that that you have to look after yourself first. So that's always been my thing. Look after yourself first. But if you can afford to give a little, then as I say, you will see tangible results. I'd like to think all my patrons feel proud of the Mythology database, and hopefully it's the work I'm doing as well, and the research, which as I say, is fantastic. I love what I do. So yeah, I'm scared I'm going to just now waffle and witter on. So I will stop if there's no more questions. Someone just said, "Oh, Egypt doesn't get rain." Right now, there's not much rain in Egypt, but there are times when Egypt has had plenty of rain over the last 10,000 years or so. That's to Jackie. So, yes, we have to remember there is a temporal dimension to stories as well as a geographical one. And then society changes, so we have to be really aware of all these things. So, yeah, thank you all for your questions. It looks like loads of you had a really good chat. We've stuck around 100 viewers most of the chat, so I appreciate all of you coming along and answering questions. Hope you've learned something, you've had some good thoughts, and just thank you for everything, for your kind words. And I will release a Wuros video soon, and then a Dawn Goddess and Earth Goddess video after, and carry on tweaking the Mythology database, and I'll give updates on some of the research going on for some of the universities if I can, on the Patreon and the YouTube members. So with that, the Immortal Art, unfortunately you have just missed us, but it's on YouTube to watch in a minute. But yeah, we had a really good chat about AI. Stefan Milo, hope he's well. Watch his videos, give him some love. Because I think he might be a little lonely. Give him, he's got a nice family, I'm sure, and a daughter. But we want to see his pottery. If you send him love, ask him to see what he's made. I'd like to see that. So yes, with that, thank you for everything. Look after yourselves, and I'll try and do another live stream in a week or two. So yes, let me know if you have questions, and I'll save them up for the next live stream. Take care, everyone. Toodle pip, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.